Hey gamers, this is Liz Davidson from Beyond Solitaire, and today I'm going to be reviewing Cloudspire from Chip Theory Games. Cloudspire is basically the board game version of a MOBA game. So each player is going to have a fortress at one end of the map. And this map is not set, by the way. It's made of this modular neoprene, so each game can look very different from the last. But your main goal is to protect your own fortress while deploying your minions, heroes, and spires to take out the other one. What's really staggering about this game is the amount of choice you have as you seek to do all of that. There are three types of units in the game. There are heroes, there are minions, and there are spires. Depending on the scenario you're playing, your heroes may have some limitations, but basically your heroes have a lot of life. They can be upgraded, and they can also take upgrades, which means that you can add, for example, attack chips to them to give them more attack, or if it's a ranged hero, you can add range, which enables them to attack from further away. You can also add extra defense chips that bulk up their health and make it harder to kill them. The other thing that makes heroes interesting is that while other units have very limited movement, heroes can typically cross more types of terrain. You'll notice here that this is basically a path that will take you from one fortress gate to the other. Typically speaking, a minion can only travel on the main path, but heroes have more terrain options. For example, Cram the Mighty here has a mountain symbol, which means that he can walk through normal pathways, forests, and mountain areas. Minions, however, are interesting in themselves. When you deploy them, you have some choices. For example, I can deploy these two minions separately so that I can have them attack more as they move along the path, or I can stack them, in which case one minion can sort of act as a meat shield for the other while they move up the path. That means when the top minion is defeated, the bottom one can spring into action and continue where things left off. The other thing I should say about minions, though, is that unlike heroes, minions have to move, and they have to move to the fullest extent of their range possible. The only way to stop them is by blocking their movement with other minions. So you have to be careful about the order you deploy them in, and you have to be aware that they're just going to move into deadly situations, no matter what happens on the field. The third type of unit is a spire. So these are set up for the enemy in the first solo scenario, but spires are basically towers that have certain amounts of range, attack, and fortification chips on them. So this minaret is going to be pretty tough to take out because it's got so many chips underneath. While siege towers do not move, they do have an opportunity on the enemy's turn to shoot at enemy units that come into their range. So rather than have minions that automatically move up the path, or heroes who you have to be careful with because in some cases if they die you lose the scenario, or at least you lose a major advantage, siege towers are stationary buildings that just automatically work as enemies get closer. The other really exciting aspect of this game is source. So source is the resource, that every faction in this game is fighting over, and when you get some, you can use it to make purchases from the market, which include new chips, but also pieces of terrain that you can put over the current map to change it. You can use it to build new spires, or you can actually use it to upgrade your fortress. So every faction in this game, and there are 4, has a different set of upgrade options that you can choose to take advantage of during your turn when you can spend source. You can also explore landmarks and upgrade your units as you go. All of these game elements come together to create something that's very complicated, but also very satisfying. The level of choice that you have in the game, the number of different strategies that you can try, and the way that things can just shift for you in the middle of a battle keep things really exciting, and I've really never played a board game quite like this one. The main mode of the game is basically player versus player, so you can have up to 4 players. This is set up like 2, but this particular setup is actually the first setup in the solo scenario campaign book. Because the game is so complicated and because there's so many choices involved, what you end up with is a game that would be really hard to do a full AI for, where you just pick an opponent and go. So Chip Theory Games has a couple of options in place for solo players. First is the Cloudspire Solo Scenarios book. This book is no joke, it's pretty chunky, and there are scenarios set up for every single faction so you can learn how to play them better, and it provides these really interesting puzzles that you basically have to solve in order to win. So in this first scenario, we were told what enemy fortresses to set up, and then in the next page, we're going to be told our objectives, our scenario win and loss conditions, specific rules, and notes for the AI. And this will change per scenario you play, so it's good that we have a good guide here. The other option for solo players is endless mode, where you choose one faction and then fight wave after wave of enemies from other factions. So as a solo player, there are a lot of options for you here. And although I have not personally explored it, so I can't say one way or the other whether it's good, there's also an entire book of cooperative scenarios for those of you who are so inclined. Cloudspire has a lot going on and we could really talk about it all day, but I think I'm going to stop here and go to some final thoughts. Cloudspire is an interesting game to review because there's so many elements of this game that I love and that I think are just really touching on greatness. And then there are a couple of things about it that I think take away from that greatness a little bit. But let's start with what's awesome. I think the best thing about Cloudspire is the depth of the strategy and the richness of the choices that it offers you. There's so many different ways to go in this game, even within the same faction. So there are 4 different factions in the game, and each has units that have different special abilities, different upgrades, different advantages, and it's up to you to piece that out and make choices about how to deploy those units and what order should you deploy them, what's going on the board. And then you also have choices to make about upgrading your fortress or what types of upgrades you should build on your spires, which spires you should build and where. There's so much that goes into it and it's all really fun and it's pleasantly agonizing to sit there and try to decide what to do and to try out different strategies in the solo scenarios. It's also really clear that a lot of effort was put into the solo campaign. Even though you can't just pick up and play against another opponent, the solo puzzles that are given to you are really hard and it will make you play again and again, especially for the sort of person who really wants to solve the puzzle and feel like you've played a flawless game strategically. So I found that it's not as hard early on to just beat the solo puzzle with just one objective. But if you want to get all of the objectives, you have to really fight for it and plan it out and push yourself as a player. And that's something that I really appreciate. I feel like I'm really learning each of the factions as I go through the solo campaign. The other thing I appreciate about Cloudspire is that, honestly, it's just not like any other game I've ever played. I don't own any games that have that MOBA feel the way that Cloudspire does, or that offer me the kind of gameplay that it does. It is truly a unique game in my experience as a gamer, and I'm really impressed with that. I play so many things that feel kind of the same or that feel like callbacks to something else, and Cloudspire is really its own thing, and I love it. So now for my concerns. My first concern is just that this game is very complicated. I alluded to having a lot of choice and a lot of strategic pathways that you could take, but one of the consequences of that is that there are a whole lot of little rules and details in the game that you're just going to mess up. If that's something that bothers you, or you want to make sure you play your game perfectly, expect some frustration when you play Cloudspire. I've played it several times, I've spent hours playing it, and I'm still making rules and mistakes. The other potential concern you might have as a solo player is that solo play is really limited to that campaign. You play in order, it works you through the different factions, and then eventually, even though it's going to take a while, it will come to an end. Your only other option at that point is endless mode, where you just pick a faction and battle wave after wave of enemy units, which might be great for you if you like endless modes, especially in other types of games that you play. Or it may frustrate you because you can't exactly win in endless mode. So that's really about what you prefer as a solo player. The campaign is definitely meaty and satisfying, but it's limited. So make sure that that's what you're willing to go for. And the other thing I just want to be honest about is that Cloudspire is expensive. The list price for the base game is $129.99 plus shipping, and the components bear that out. This game is so well made. The neoprene is great. The maps look amazing. The chips feel so chunky and satisfying in your hands. There is a lot that goes into the production value of a chip theory game, and in that sense, you are getting your money's worth. And I just feel like it's important to mention the price, because if you're a solo gamer and you think that this is a good choice for you for solo, you need to make sure that a campaign is what you want and that $130 plus is a good investment for you. That said, Cloudspire is an amazing game. I'm so impressed with so much of what it's able to do. Even when it frustrates me, I find myself going back and thinking about it. And to me, that's the essence of what a good game is. So despite some flaws, I think it really touches greatness as a game. And for that, I'm giving it an 8 out of 10 and a Dice Tower seal of approval. Happy gaming.
Thanks so much for watching another Dice Tower video. If you enjoy our videos, subscribe to the channel for more fun, comprehensive board game coverage. Also, consider joining us at one of our events. Come to Dice Tower Retreat, a small, intimate gathering where gaming is king. Join us for Dice Tower Cruise, the largest board game cruise. Attend Dice Tower West in Las Vegas for gaming fun on the West Coast, or Dice Tower East in Orlando in sunny Florida. Dice Tower Conventions, the friendliest gaming conventions on Earth. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower.